A loser goes to prison and becomes the leader of the coolest gang, but his cellmate is not satisfied with it. Find out what happens next from our recap of the movie Let's Go to Prison. 2 million Americans end up behind bars sooner or later. One of them, a guy named John Lishitsky, has just recently been released from prison and comes to a gun store to buy a pistol. John has spent most of his life in prison. He's already been convicted 3 times. For the first time, the protagonist was arrested at the age of 8. That's when he stole a van with the prize money of a small publishing house, hoping there was $1 million inside. He was caught while trying to cash a huge check. A judge named Nelson Beedman III gave the boy the harshest sentence possible, 7 years in juvenile detention center. That's where John turned into a real criminal. After getting out of prison, he broke the law a second time and again ended up in Biederman's court. The judge sent the guy behind bars for 8 years. After being released, Lishitsky, committed a crime again. Guess who prosecuted him? Certainly Biederman. The judge again imposed the harshest sentence on the guy. Once released after his 3rd sentence, John decided to take revenge on Biederman for all the offenses. But it seems that the main character is too late. It turns out that the nasty judge died 3 days ago. What a disappointment. John goes to a bar to drown his sorrow with alcohol. He reads a newspaper and finds out that the judge has a son, Nelson Biederman IV. The main character decides that this man will be the object of his revenge. Lishitsky attends the judge's funeral, and while his son is giving a pompous speech, sneaks into Biederman IV's car, steals some pocket money, spits in his coffee, and empties the contents of his inhaler. After the wake, an unsuspecting Nelson gets behind the wheel, drinks coffee with John's spit, turns on the music, sings along merrily, and picks up his inhaler. But it's empty. Biederman panics and starts choking right behind the wheel. The man pulls up at an Asian pharmacy, bursts in and scatters the goods on the shelf, desperately hoping to find a new inhaler. The pharmacy owner decides that Nelson is either a robber or an addict in search of dope. John is eagerly observing the scene from his car. Biederman IV finally finds an inhaler on the shelves and hides behind the counter with it. The pharmacy owner grabs a gun, and then Nelson shows him the inhaler, trying to explain what is the reason why he broke into the pharmacy. However, the Asians mistake it for a small pistol. At that moment, the cunning John takes his own gun and shoots into the air, thus frightening the pharmacy owners even more. Eventually, Nelson is arrested. Using his status and contacts in the court, he demands his release. However, all his influential friends turn on him and even offer him a rather ineffective lawyer. They take advantage of the situation to get rid of this insolent narcissist. Nelson attempts to bribe the judge right during the court session, but the formidable woman immediately puts the trickster in his place. After examining the footage from the pharmacist's surveillance camera, the jury passes its verdict: guilty. Biederman IV is sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison. It might seem to be a sweet revenge, but John is not satisfied with the fact Nelson simply went to prison and decides to join him to continue his torment even behind bars. He sells illegal substances to the cops who pretend to be his clients and calmly turns himself in to the cops. His 4th trial begins. Lishitsky asks the same judge to convict him and send him to the same prison where Nelson is being held. On the way there, he meets Biederman IV and tries to befriend him. All the newcomers are lined up and told the rules of the prison. Lishitsky has been in this prison before and bribes a guard he knows to share a cell with Nelson. Biederman IV is horrified by the appearance of the cell and a rusty toilet, and even sobs in terror. However, John calms the poor guy down and gives him some tips on surviving in prison. For example, keep your mouth shut, don't cry, protect yourself, and pretend to be very cool. The main characters go to their first dinner in prison together. Lishitsky introduces the members of the White Kingdom and their leader Lynette to Nelson. This is the toughest and most powerful gang in prison. Lynette causes a fight in the canteen, and naive Nelson gives him up to the guards. As a result, the leader of the White Kingdom is locked up in solitary confinement for a month. John warns Nelson that Lynette will return and take a cruel revenge on him. The prisoners hate snitches. The convicts take a shower. A fat, dark-skinned man named Barry approaches sees Nelson and starts flirting with him. John defiantly hugs his cellmate, insinuating that they are a couple, and threatens anyone who dares to hurt his friend. Biederman IV begs his lawyer to get him out, but it turns out that he has already been fired, and as a result lost all the money. The only thing the lawyer can offer him is a can of soda. Gradually, Nelson gets used to the prison life, even though the other inmates constantly bully him and even add nasty surprises to his food. Biederman IV is especially intimidated by Fat Barry, who constantly shows him little rubber ducks. Despite all his sorrows, Nelson manages to practice wushu and read books. On one not-so-nice day, John sells his cellmate to Fat Barry. He is assigned to take out the garbage, and Nelson is left alone in the cell. He is immediately kidnapped and brought to Barry's cell. The fat lover of young white men arranges a proper romantic date for Nelson, with candles, wine, music, and red bed sheets. But romance quickly turns to threatening. Barry promises Nelson to deprive him of his most important male organ and stuff him in a shoebox if he doesn't do everything the man wants. They begin with an Eskimo kiss, but a few dates later they will do much more serious things. And when Nelson feels like things can't get any worse, he finds out that Lynette has been released from the punishment cell, which means he doesn't have long to live. The prisoners are betting on when and how Lynette will do it. Nelson tries to make amends and asks the leader of the White Kingdom for forgiveness, but he stabs the main character with a fork and says that he will have no mercy. John says that Nelson has three options: kill himself, get in a fight, or wait for Lynette to come after him. Biederman chooses the second option, hits the guard and goes to the punishment cell for 2 days. Upon his return, Nelson comes to a local chemist and asks for a substance that can send him to the afterlife. The man gives him a detergent for cleaning boats and syringes. The same day, Lynette comes to Nelson's cell and starts beating him. Surprisingly, Biederman even attempts to fight back, and he's pretty good at it. A syringe with the detergent falls on the floor, and Lynette, thinking it's some kind of a drug for getting high, decides to use it right away, and obviously it sends him to the afterlife. The members of the White Kingdom are shocked by the fact that such a weak man has defeated their leader, and conclude that Nelson deserves respect. He now has a reputation as one of the toughest convicts in prison. White Kingdom invites him to join their ranks, and Biederman IV is thrilled with such unexpected success. He tries to get rid of Barry's advances, but this fat man doesn't intend to give up so easily. He confesses his affectionate feelings to Nelson, and at this moment, Barry is attacked by thugs from the White Kingdom. However, Nelson demands them to stop and not to hurt the fat guy. What a twist! The guards show up and throw John to the punishment cell, even though he wasn't involved in the fighting at all. 3 weeks later, Leszczycki returns to the main unit of the prison and finds out that during his imprisonment, Nelson has become the leader of the White Kingdom. Now he teaches the prisoners the peaceful martial art of wushu and even stages theatrical performances with them. Biederman IV thanks John for all his help and support throughout these hard times, and Leszczycki becomes enraged. He wants to take revenge on Nelson, not make him the coolest convict in prison. As a result, Nelson becomes a parole applicant, and Barry offers him to celebrate this special occasion. The guy refuses, and that's when John comes into his cell. He suggests Nelson a farewell drink and gives him an open can. At first, Biederman hesitates, but eventually drinks the contents of this can, after which he immediately faints. The guards wake Nelson up in the morning and send him to the hearing. The unfortunate guy doesn't even realize that he has the phrase "white power" written on his forehead and a forbidden symbol drawn on his hands. Needless to say, Nelson is not approved by the parole commission and remains in prison for the full sentence. After returning to his cell, Biederman immediately pounces on his fake friend. The men start an incredibly violent fight, during which John confesses that he has been taking up a revenge on Nelson for his father's sins. The guards burst into the cell and set up a death match for them on Friday. The situation is horrible, since there are no survivors in this kind of a duel. The weaker man falls first, and then the guards eliminate the stronger opponent. John and Nelson realize that they are in serious trouble. The prisoners and even the guards make their bets, while the protagonists desperately search for a remedy to this situation. Nelson has a visitor. It's Barry. It turns out that the romantic fat guy has been paroled. Barry cries and misses his friend, and Nelson admits that the only way he can get out of prison is in a body bag. That said, Biederman comes up with a tricky plan. He officially adopts Barry, and now this fat man becomes the chairman of the Biederman Foundation and the holder of a multi-million-dollar fortune until Nelson gets out of prison. It's time for the fight. The prisoners are excited about the upcoming showdown. Nelson and John come to the center field and begin a fight. First blows, knives, license plate armor, disinfectant, they use absolutely everything. At some point, the main characters simultaneously take syringes out of their pocket and give each other injections, after which they immediately fall to the ground. The guards announce that it's a draw and take the bodies of the protagonists out of the field. The next day, the funeral is held, and Barry, as Nelson's sole heir, receives $8 million. As the night falls, the fat man takes a shovel and digs up the totally alive Nelson. We learn that the protagonists made a deal and went to the local chemist. They bought a drug that puts a person in a temporary coma. This was the drug they injected during the fight. Barry bribed a pathologist and the plan went smoothly. Nelson is about to leave, but Barry reminds him of the laws of karma and digs up John after all. They shake hands and decide not to quarrel anymore. A year has passed. Nelson and Barry are still together and seem to adore each other. They establish a winery, but the local critic gives their wine a bad review. Out of nowhere, John, who calls himself the head winemaker, shows up and demands the critic to leave a good review. The intimidated man awards the toilet wine with the highest score. Nelson, Barry and John are traveling in their car listening to music. They are perfectly happy. Give this video a like if you didn't expect such an ending, and subscribe to the channel to get more pleasure from such recaps of the coolest movies. I'll see you later.